Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you look at what he's been able to do the first couple of years and coming in, last year throwing 50 touchdowns.
Well, his overall skill set is sickening.
He's a fantastic player.
He's amazing. Give it to him.
He's a great player.
I hate playing against him, I'm going to be honest. And I'm not even on defense.
I mean, he's the best quarterback in the National Football League.
He's talented, man. He's wise beyond his years.
The Chiefs are coming off their first Super Bowl win in decades, and just 3 years into the league, Patrick Mahomes has already won an NFL MVP and a championship. Now he's locked up as the face of the Chiefs for the next decade plus. But before Mahomes took over full-time in the 2018 season, the most important position in Kansas City sports was held by both Hall of Famers, journeymen, and everything in between. In this video, we're going to take it back to the early days of the AFL, all the way to Mahomes' first start, focusing specifically on the starting quarterbacks of the Chiefs. Lamar Hunt founded the American Football League in 1960 along with his own team, the Dallas Texans. The franchise's first quarterback would be Cotton Davidson, a fitting name for a football player in Dallas. The Baylor product was once a first-round pick in the NFL draft to the Baltimore Colts. He only started one game for them as they eventually wound up with Johnny Unitas, but in 1960, with a fresh start on the Texans, Davidson led the team to an 8-6 record. He would start again the next year before getting traded to the Raiders for the number 1 overall pick in the 1963 AFL draft. That pick turned into Buck Buchanan, a Hall of Fame defensive tackle. Speaking of Hall of Famers, the Texans were about to luck out with another player who would change the franchise forever. Len Dawson was drafted out of Purdue in the first round of the 1957 NFL Draft to the Steelers. He was eventually traded to the Browns and couldn't make a mark there either. So in 1962 he made this switch to the AFL, where he linked back up with head coach Hank Stram, who was once an assistant at Purdue. From that point on, there was no looking back. Dawson led the league in touchdowns and yards per attempt, as he won AFL Player of the Year. The Texans faced the two-time champion Oilers in the championship, and they came out on top in double OT. Dawson had his spot in Dallas cemented, but the team itself actually didn't. With the Cowboys sharing the same city, there just wasn't a place for two teams. So in 1963, Lamar Hunt took his new franchise quarterback to Kansas City. Now as a Chief, Dawson continued to be one of the AFL's best players, but the team couldn't get back to the championship until the 1966 season. They won the AFL, but this year, for the first time ever, the AFL champ would play the NFL champ, otherwise known as the Super Bowl, a term later coined by Lamar Hunt himself. Anyway, who better to meet in that championship than
The Green Bay Packers.
Dawson was coming off one of his best seasons ever, but on the other side was Vince Lombardi and the perceived superior NFL champion Packers. Well, no underdog uprising here. The Packers let loose in the second half and were crowned champions. Up to this point, Dawson had started almost every game in Kansas City, but he went down with a bad knee injury early in the next season. Backup quarterback Jackie Lee then broke his ankle the next week, and in went third stringer Mike Livingston. Luckily at this point, the Chiefs still had a tremendous defense, so they went on a winning streak. Dawson then returned to beat the defending Super Bowl champion Jets. Why do I feel like that's the only time in my life I'll be saying that? Dawson had now led the Chiefs to Super Bowl IV against the Vikings, and there Hank Stram delivered his famous quote,
Just keep matriculating the ball down the field, boys.
Dawson did just that, and he won Super Bowl MVP. He played through 1975 when he finally retired past 40. He basically leads the Chiefs franchise history in every important passing stat out there, and in wins too. In 1987, he was elected to the Hall of Fame. Mike Livingston had been getting more and more starts by this point, so he took over for a few years. But it seemed like the Chiefs had peaked, only making the playoffs once since Super Bowl IV. In 1979, the Chiefs selected Clemson quarterback Steve Fuller in the first round. It only took a few games for Fuller to start over Livingston, but in 1980, Fuller went down with an injury, which thrusted former Dolphins 12th round pick Bill Kenny into the game. But this man was so unknown the team didn't even spell his name on the jersey right. Still, he led them to a couple of wins and the team finished 500, their best record in 7 years. Although they were drafted 11 rounds apart, Kenny had hopped Fuller on the depth chart. He played behind a terrible offensive line, but was still selected to the Pro Bowl in 1983, and there may have been a reason for this elevated play. Kenny might have felt the pressure after the Chiefs selected Todd Blackburn in the first round of the 1983 draft. Yes, the famous 83 draft where John Elway went first overall, and then the Chiefs selected Blackburn over Dan Marino and Jim Kelly. Blackburn would get his chance to justify that pick in 1984 when Kenny went down with an injury in the preseason. He ended up starting 8 games that year while throwing for 6 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. In the end, Blackburn never started a full season for the Chiefs, while Marino and Kelly had Hall of Fame careers. Because of that, he's been called the team's biggest draft bust ever. With Kenny, it seemed like he was never able to get over the hump, and during the strike year of 87, the team started 5 different quarterbacks. In 1988, Blackburn was traded away and in came veteran Steve DeBerg, who eventually won the starting job. At the age of 36, DeBerg had his best year in the league in 1990. He threw for 23 touchdowns and just 4 picks, and the Chiefs went 11-5. And the next year, the team won their first playoff game since their Super Bowl win. Then in 1992, DeBerg left the team, and in came free agent Dave Craig. The team went 10-6 with a serviceable Craig, but couldn't win their playoff game. After all these heartbreaks, the Chiefs needed a proven winner. After being replaced by Steve Young in San Francisco, Joe Montana and his 4 Super Bowl reigns moved to Kansas City. Oh, and the team brought in future Hall of Fame running back Marcus Allen as well. On Montana's first day of practice, the defense finished up first, but stayed to watch Montana play. Montana led the team and its newly installed West Coast offense to an 11-5 record. After 2 come-from-behind playoff victories, the Chiefs finally made it to the AFC Championship. But the team failed to score a touchdown in the first half. Then Montana suffered a concussion in the third quarter, and the season was over. In the 1994 season, Montana beat Young and the Niners and outlasted Elway in one final showdown. But despite those 2 major wins, the team went 9-7 and ended up losing to Marino's Dolphins in the wild card round. Following that, Montana announced his retirement from the NFL. So after making the playoffs for 5 straight years, it looked like the Chiefs were headed back to the dark days. But longtime backup Steve Bono had different ideas. Playing alongside a great rushing attack and defense, he led the team to a 13-3 record and a Pro Bowl berth of his own. Once again, though, things didn't end well as the team was eliminated in its first playoff game. Bono would start again the next year, but didn't quite enjoy the same success and was at one point benched for Rich Gannon. That was before Gannon became a Pro Bowler, let alone an MVP. In 1997, the team handed the job to Elvis Grbac, probably the best name since Cotton Davidson. Grbac came aboard the talented team and they went 13-3, but again couldn't make any noise in the postseason. Over the next few years, Grbac and the Chiefs played up and down ball. In 2000, he had a great year and then left for a big contract with the Ravens. So the Chiefs traded a first-round pick for Rams quarterback Trent Green, who had previously been benched for Kurt Warner after an injury. This paired Green up with his former coach Dick Vermeil after he returned from a short post-Super Bowl retirement. Green would start every game for the next 5 seasons, finally bringing some consistency and health at the position in Kansas City. In 2003, the team went 13-3 with Priest Holmes setting numerous rushing records. The team was having its best offensive year ever, but they weren't able to top Peyton Manning's Colts in a shootout during the divisional round of that year. Then the Chiefs went 10-6 in 2005, but failed to make the playoffs. That would be Vermeil's final year in the league. In 2006, after an early season concussion, Green played half the team's games, but the season once again ended at the hands of the Colts. 2007 would be another turning point for the franchise as the team elected to trade Green to the Dolphins and re-sign backup Damon Heward. But Heward would end up trading injuries and starting spots with Brody Croyle over the next year and a half. Eventually, they were both placed on injured reserve, and 7th round pick Tyler Thigpen started for most of 2008. The team switched to the spread offense, which enabled Thigpen to play better, but the team went 2-14, its worst season ever. So in comes a new GM, a new head coach, and a new quarterback. Matt Castle was brought in after a promising 2008 season with the Tom Brady-less Patriots. Although the Chiefs signed him to a big 6-year extension, the team went just 4-12 in his first year. In 2010, though, Castle had the best year of his career. He was named a Pro Bowler as the Chiefs went 10-6 before getting knocked out in their first playoff game once again. After that, Castle just wasn't as good and dealt with injury problems as well. Tyler Palko then took things over, and he threw for just 2 touchdowns in 6 games. That resulted in a benching for former Broncos quarterback Kyle Orton, who earlier that season had been benched for Tim Tebow. Somehow Orton and the Chiefs were able to upset the 13-0 Packers, but still finished the season 7-9. Castle returned the next year in 2012 looking even worse, and once again got injured. Brady Quinn, another Bronco who once sat behind Tebow, he got the call. And the team finished 2-14 once again. So they hit the reset button once again with a new GM, a new head coach, and a new quarterback. Castle was released and the team traded for Alex Smith. Immediately with Andy Reid, Smith was a Pro Bowler for the first time in his career, and the team went 11-5. In the third quarter of the AFC wildcard, they led 38-10, but somehow conceded to the Colts once again in the playoffs, this time with Andrew Luck at QB. After barely missing the playoffs in 2014, Smith led the Chiefs to 3 consecutive postseason appearances. He was selected to the Pro Bowl 2 more times in 2016 and 2017. After about a decade of quarterback mishaps, Smith was more than solid. At one point in 2017, he was the front runner for MVP. The reality was the Chiefs did have an MVP who played that season. First round pick Patrick Mahomes made his NFL debut week 17 after the Chiefs rested Smith with the playoff spot already clinched. But when the Chiefs lost to the Titans in the wild card round, they traded Smith to the Redskins. And within just about 2 years, the player who made his debut on December 31st, 2017, would go on to win the Chiefs' first championship in 50 years.